I do want to ask you, Jim, prior to Ken Shamrock and Dan Severn stepping between the ropes, were you a UFC consumer? Had you bought a UFC on pay per view or seen the VHSs? What was your level of interest in the UFC?
I was a fan. I was a big fan, and still am a MMA fan. So yeah, Kenny was one of my favorites, and I hired him. So I thought he did a good job. You know, he was a handful to manage at times, but he was an attraction. If he had stayed in wrestling and not gone back from wrestling to MMA, there's just really no telling how great he could have been because he had it. He had it, and it was just he was outstanding to be around, and he had it, and he's going to be a star. He bolted on us because he wanted to get back into MMA, and he didn't like the travel. So you know, that's the same thing. A lot of guys have issues with is travel. So yeah, it's going to be it's Kenny's story is great, and he could have been really special if he had been able to stay with us and stay out of MMA for a time and just hung in there. But I always liked Kenny. He was like I said, he could be challenging to manage, but he was a real good guy, and and he did a good job for us. I was always enjoyed working with him, even though, like I said, he could be a handful.
I do want to mention, I don't think a lot of wrestling fans listening to this may even know this, but Ken Shamrock had a run in wrestling prior to his WWF experience. He was actually a regular pro wrestler from 89 to 92. He even got a tour of All Japan as a rookie. He did spend some time with George Scott's South Atlantic Pro Wrestling, but the UWF promotion over in Japan was another quote unquote shoot style performance. And even in 93, Shamrock, believe it or not, was one of the founding members of Pancrase, along with everybody's favorite, I guess we'll call him the murder grandpa, Minoru Suzuki. The idea was we want to do shoot matches, but every now and again, some of the top guys will do business. So he's sort of on, we might call it pro wrestling adjacent, but we know that he really becomes a star through MMA. And in 1996, there was a lot of negative publicity, and the UFC found themselves banned on pay per view. Companies like Time Warner Cable and TCI, and even Viewers Choice, they were pulling out of the MMA game. Did you think that was a real controversy, or did you think it was much ado about nothing? The idea of mixed martial arts on pay per view back in its infancy.
Well, I thought it was a product that would sell well on pay per view. Some of the carriers thought not, but I certainly did. It was a really neat vehicle, and they had some bigger than life characters as well, and none bigger than Ken Shamrock, who had a great look, had outstanding matches. There's a shot of him and Dan Severn. I hired both those guys at one time to come into work in WWE. So it was interesting times, to say the least.
When Senator John McCain said it should be banned, and he was running opposition to the UFC and basically called it human cockfighting. Did you disagree with that?
Yeah, a little bit. I thought it was a little I thought it was a little uh, overstated. It was just another great sport. Look where Dana White's taking it. It's a major sport. It's a major sport that is popular all around the world, and but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it, still do. So, and Dana's done an amazing job of building his brand. So I had I had no lack of confidence that it was that it wasn't not going to work, uh, and it worked. It has worked very well. It's a big money maker. It's making a lot of talents, a lot of money.
We should mention that in February of 97, before that famous WrestleMania 13 special guest referee spot with Ken Shamrock,
Mm.
it makes the observer that Ken Shamrock is in discussions to wrestle Shinya Hashimoto for the IWGP heavyweight title at the Tokyo Dome. And there's a lot of discussion about this. And the Torch would even report Ken Shamrock, who has wrestled worked matches before his Pancrase and UFC stints, is near finalizing his first worked pro wrestling match for April 12th. He's also had talks with WCW and the WWF. If Michaels were to be released from his contract, which is unlikely, the freed up money could go towards securing the exclusive rights to Shamrock in the U.S. So I want to ask you, I mean, both the Torch and the Observer have it on pretty good authority that Ken Shamrock's trying to get back into wrestling, and maybe he's going to do something in the Tokyo Dome, and maybe it's with New Japan. Maybe they're going to allow him to do a title shot. But then there's even speculation from Wade that, hey, if Shawn Michaels really has lost his smile and he really is going to leave wrestling, we know that doesn't happen just yet, that it might be in the budget for him to come to the WWF. How do you remember Shamrock being on your radar? Do you hear of these reports from New Japan? Does he reach out to the office? Take us back to that.
Well, I been talking to Kenny. Kenny and I became good friends, and he was a star. He looked like a star. He could perform like a star, and we were very happy to enter in dialogue with him. So it was not a hard negotiation. You know, he couldn't make his mind up if he wanted to be a MMA fighter or if he wanted to be a WWE superstar. He just he had all the intangibles. He had the look, the mindset, the athletic abilities. So we were very happy to be entering competition or dialogue, I should say, with Kenny. I always thought he had an amazing upside. He looked great. He's believable. And I thought that WrestleMania 13, he did a great job officiating the Austin Bret Hart match. So we always had great confidence that he was going to be our guy. We were wrong. He was our guy for a good while. It looked like he was going to be for a good while, but he had that bug in him that, you know, he enjoyed this freedom. He enjoyed the opportunity to fight and to train. He did not enjoy the travel that pro wrestling presented for Kenny. So we were kind of between a rock and a hard spot there. But his love of MMA really trumped anything we were trying to do because it gives him time off to train, and he loved training. And so he was a interesting character, to say the least. But I'm sure glad that we got a chance to work together for at least as long as we did.